All right there. Hello there. Welcome to our first newest Rock City. We'll be doing another one. We'll be talking about now. It's not Rock City. Psych, 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 psych. When have you ever saw me last play video games on this channel and actually play video game and talk about video games? When was the last time? Quite a long time ago. I apologize. I'm sorry. I apologize to the people who have been watching this channel for the past year, who have to deal with watching me blatantly destroy people online and debate them and probably tear apart their families from the amount of stupidity I've been finding these days. But we're going to talk about education today. You don't care about my opinion. I'm definitely going to give you information today. Don't worry. You'll have something to eat and digest because that's all you'll do, right? You're a consumer. But if you're a person who cares and is not a consumer and you're my best friend and you're just watching this channel and you've been subscribed already, if you are not, why are you not subscribed? No, seriously. No, actually, seriously. Like every one of you who probably has a YouTube channel probably also asks for subscribers. Just so you all know, there's a double standard that goes around that whenever I ask for subscribers, it's bad when the same people will say that it's bad for me to ask for friends, ask me to get money with no friends. So, I mean, I don't know how that makes sense, but maybe it works in their world. But today we're going to talk about education. So, education Florida, which I had to go into, which I'm probably going to go through throughout the video. Hey, editor and me show screenshots of this. I had to look into my very own state because they had just basically said, we love PragerU, let's use PragerU in our schools. I live in Florida, so yes, I do happen to have a quite more different level of voice when I'm in Florida, right? So, has everybody heard the thing called use your inside room voice? You gotta be very quiet, keep it at a level. So that's what I've been like in Florida whenever I go outside. Wow, I go outside. But it's currently in the 40s and 50s out there, so I can only go outside with like this very huge jacket that I have now that I never opened the bag for the past year and only until now just did, which by what a convenience, it was such a heavy duty jacket. Whenever I go outside with it, I feel absolutely amazing, right? I got sick still. Why? Because it's not because I went outside. The place I'm at constantly gets into the 60s range because somebody, for some reason, I don't know who's doing this, keeps turning down the temperature when the place outside is 40s and 50s. And somebody puts cooling while the place is colder than the AC's temperature for cooling. Do they not know that with science, if they knew basic science, it would only cool down the place further until it hits 53 degrees? Probably nobody knows this, and I wish I knew better, right? Maybe it's my fault because I'm the one causing that. Maybe it's my fault because I'm sick. I unfortunately get sick from being inside rather than going outside. I think the last time I got sick for going outside was for not drinking enough water, and that is my fault. But we're talking about education here, and something that makes me very alerted is the amount of family members who are far away from me, who live in Florida, who live in different cities, who are sending their kids to schools only for their schools to teach them AI generated, AI pioneered studying programs that are just shoved into their face for free, like Google is doing, like what Amazon is doing, what PragerU is doing, and what the specific foundations behind PragerU is doing. It's being funded by many conservative groups out there. If Editor Me has photos of that, please do. I saw a really great video today that broke down this thing in better detail. If I have a link to it, I'll probably link to it. Most likely I'll link to it. Hey, remember that, Editor Me? Put a link to it. Put a link to your sources. People, for some reason, you're just crazy. I want to sidetrack, right? You love this part about this, right? Everybody knows how many times where people basically say that their evidence comes from their very mouth. Their evidence is what they say. They can make it up, and that is evidence. But I get asked for like entire foundation worth of evidence to prove my statements now these days when I go against lunatics who don't know what they're talking about. So they'd rather hear somebody say something that completely doesn't exist than something that I have evidence to back up with, along with numerous experts backing up this statement with. So I apologize for not being aggressive enough. Maybe I should probably shut up and stop saying my opinion and start saying the facts. Wait, those don't work anymore. Which is where I'm starting to see an issue in, is that we have this teacher-student relationship dilemma that's been in discussion since what? 2021. 2021, right? since the anti-vaxxer movement came to be at its peak during COVID's, worst years possible, which is 2020 and 2021. 2021 was where it was peaking, right? And then it was starting to finally nosedive when 2022 came to be. And it did go into variance. Teacher and students, so the relationship between those two has definitely severely been changed, has changed since then. Why? So we don't we don't only have just AI coming into place. We have many other things coming into place. So let's for example, if anyone has looked at this, there are so many things that went on since 2022, 2023 that I can literally describe for what things are causing people to start lessening their ties with their teachers. Last time I graduated in 2023, I had teachers who listened to me and didn't give me AI or used AI tools in order to educate me. And when I had taught students and worked with them in projects and collaborations, which probably most students are afraid of doing because they can't simply start conversations without ChatGPT anymore, I had to actually talk with people without actually asking for their phone number because, I guess people rather rizz up girls than learn how to read. Which, if you want to know, reading was quite rare back in the day in the 60s and 50s, and people really badly wanted to learn how to read. Now, reading is basically optional. I don't know, man. If somebody can explain to me why that's optional, I don't know. It's affordable, it should be. It should probably be the most boring thing you can do. I can get the boring part about reading, but it sure is more affordable than your PlayStation controller that you probably broke over 5 times the past 5 years. Maybe 14 times. Maybe I'm underestimating your strength. Perhaps I'm underestimating your potential. And most students in 2023, when I last graduated, were already panicking about AI before AI was even the way it is now, right? Teachers have been on strike for a few years in my own state. They have been on strike. Teachers are underpaid in my state. They are severely underpaid. When a teacher goes off on a student about their wage, they are not joking. Most substitutes and teachers, most likely, if you look at the data, get paid less than construction workers, than subway workers, and McDonald's workers. You can go to McDonald's and be paid much more than your teacher. Here's the difference. A teacher actually has to go to college and university, and the McDonald's employee doesn't even have to go to college or university, but yet get paid more than their teacher. You see how it doesn't make sense. Economically, it doesn't make sense. Sociologically, it doesn't make sense. Not even academically. And in Florida, this has been a pattern. This is why when somebody says, I can get more pay than you, teacher, when they try to bully their teacher, they are not kidding. You can actually receive more pay than your teacher. Do you start to see where something is wrong with that? No. Yeah, let's say your teacher was racist. Alright, cool. That's understandable. Your teacher's racist, awful human being. You can hate your teacher. That doesn't accept that the very way that you deal with your teacher is fair. It's not sane. It's not humane. Let's first explain that. If I can bring up a statistic on this, you'll see what I mean. So the average pay for teachers in Florida is low. Even if you look into other states, look at how the United States distributes their pay for teachers. And teachers are some of the very first figures that most kids will have when in their beginning parts of their lives when they go into education, public or private education. It doesn't matter. You have a teacher in front of you. That's how it was for centuries. That is just a thing that everybody else has to deal with. My issue, I have a very severe issue with how things are going, right? So most now students are now trying to say that they don't need their teachers. All right. Let's say I theoretically accept that. Let's say we don't need our teachers. Where do the teachers go? Where do the teachers go? How do they feed their children? How do they feed themselves? Wait. Oh, just send them to let's say maybe we can put them in a different job status. Wait, but teaching is literally one of the most essential, most high demand jobs in the United States right now. So where do we send them? They already went through college, university. You can't send them back to school to learn something else. They don't have the pay in order to pay the debts to go to a second college admission process. They don't. So where do they go? there's a huge conflict of interest with that. And not only, we're gonna have to go through not just teachers. This is something that most naive people don't understand. Yes, even my own principal doesn't even understand. The last principal I used to have before he, finished the construction of my school, they try to embrace AI. Right, the state of Florida is a Republican state, so of course they would embrace AI, they would embrace PragerU, they would embrace laundering, they would embrace all sorts of corrupt practices. Why wouldn't they? Okay, let's first embrace this. So in the democratic states, they don't embrace PragerU, they don't embrace all these corrupt practices. My state is less ICE heavy, less ICE active. Still, ICE still around. Don't say that. ICE is still around. It's not as heavy as it is in democratic states. Democratic states are having the higher amounts of ICE. And that's not because of Democrats telling ICE to go over there. That's because Donald Trump's sending them only in blue states, more often than actively in blue states. So we have a conflict of interest with ICE, AI, and education. And let's say we have to get into the psychology of a kid who does not question what their teacher says or what their teacher passes out. This is at first before a kid becomes rebellious in their 14, 15, 16-year-old age range, right? This is just common. The 14, 16 age range is when some teens get stubborn, most likely not to listen to their elders and not listen to anybody, which is understandable. So we're going to get into how this becomes an issue, right? So most people would not question what they would usually receive from their teachers, their professors, or anybody from like their principal. Most kids and students, whenever at a young age, would receive prompts and curriculum as stated by the people who distribute this education, these forms and tests, so that they can test their students and see that their test scores come out to be. Most places take math, science, social studies, and reading and writing and around algebra, whatever level of country or state that you're in. It really very depends who has 4 classes and who doesn't. When you start in elementary school, you have only 1 teacher, and when you're in middle school, you most likely have 7 classes. Now I know some countries have states or certain cities where they have 8 classes or 6 classes rather than 7 classes. Now in Florida, we have the 7-period system when somebody enters middle school, high school. It's to basically get them used to what it's like to work at a job. That is why they put them in 7 periods. It is related to the military and also job economics and finances, yada yada. That's an entire story of its own. When kids are when they're put AI in their face, does a kid question of what they're looking at is AI? No. This is how do I have proof of this? Okay, so most studies that have shown this now, this is a real study, shows that AI studying and learning from merely material generated by AI, a kid's performance and a teenager's performance using only AI tools and AI curriculum, AI generated tests and prompts are most likely to lose critical thinking and actually significantly lower down in performance academically, socially, and mentally. So no, it's not helping people turn into me, right? It's not turning people into people more like me or Luis or any other people I can name off like Miranda. Let's say Miranda Hole. Miranda Hole's a smart ass girl, right? Or Luis. Luis is a great example. Maybe Juan Torres. He's a smart ass. He's a woo. Right? Examples of people who did not use AI to turn into smart ass. Okay, let's say we try to grow a kid like one of those people. We start them in elementary by giving them AI generated prompt tests and little equations and AI generated artworks. Alright, tell the student, hey, start a conversation with Amanda right there at the back of the class. Tell him. And notice how the kid will start the conversation. Amanda, I think you are so cool. They're not gonna say anything. I made that up. Most kids who are in elementary school who often get AI, right, tools and are told to use AI programs, right, most of the time they don't even know how to talk. This is the thing you're gonna see with Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is going through this problem right now. They're literally being taught with AI. They're literally watching all sorts of rotten content and given AI programs, and now they can't even actually talk. And whenever you tell them what a vaccine is, they don't know what a vaccine is. They don't even know what it looks like. They don't even know how to read a word that has 13 letters in it. Right? They can't even read. Tell them, hey, what is 32 plus 11? And I bet you're gonna see somebody go to ChatGPT and type in what is 32 plus 11. So if I want to sound like an old person right now, back in my time, we didn't have to go to ChatGPT to calculate what 32 plus 11 is. The Pythagorean theorem was solved on paper before we had calculators to use it later on to solve Pythagorean theorem through calculator. You can do that on calculator. It's not legal to do so. Some tests allow this using calculators. Now they just go to ChatGPT to answer the questions for them. Most students I now know, people who I talk to who are still living in Florida, don't even know how to solve answers by themselves. They don't even know how to calculate simple equations. I see 7th graders go through 7th grade. This is alarming to me. And even I was almost a dropout in 7th grade. And even I knew when I was almost a dropout, but I obviously passed 7th grade. When I was almost dropout, knew more than a dropout in 7th grade now in 2026. That is learning. Wow. Because then I simply asked them, what is Pythagoras? And they weren't able to tell me what Pythagoras is. That is the guy behind the Pythagorean theorem. You learned this in 4th grade. You learned this in 5th grade. Now you learn that in 9th grade. You learned that in 10th grade. Wait a second. That's weird. Why are you learning it much later? Really odd. I was like, maybe I'm delusional. I then asked a few of my younger cousins who are still playing video games to this day, who are now 11, 12 years old. And I told them, hey, do you know binomials? Do you know what calculus is? Do you know what rent and taxes are? Do they know what AI is? They don't know what that is. They are 11, 12 years old and they don't know what that is. Why? Because they're so used to using AI and not even knowing that it's AI. So I tell them, hey, do you know what Spider-Man is? Who made Spider-Man? And then Frells would go around saying that ChatGPT told them all about Spider-Man. And I was like, great, alright, so now, and then I even asked these people, alright, so do they know what a Marvel movie is? And I asked these kids what a Marvel movie is. And they said, what is Marvel? And they are watching a bunch of BRAINROT videos with Marvel characters in them. And I was like, interesting, you don't know what Marvel is, yet you watch content related to Marvel with kid shows and kids content with Marvel characters on it. Really weird. Now I'll go around these places where kids think that it is funny to know what you're talking about. Really odd. But then I was like, what if I talk to teenagers? Maybe I'm still delusional. So I started to approach teenagers and see maybe teenagers might be still the same. And then I started talking to a few teenagers, asking what they knew about AI. And most of these teenagers didn't even know what AI was. Really odd. I didn't ask them what taxes were. And these teenagers that I talked with, which is a huge sample size, they didn't even know what the fuck AI was. They didn't even know how it works. They didn't even know how economics work. And I was like, okay, so what classes do they take? I asked, and then they would say, I take Algebra 1. And I told them, who is behind algebra? Why do we learn about algebra? And most of these people couldn't even tell what made algebra. And then I asked them, what is Martin Luther King? I asked these people what Martin Luther King was. These are teenagers. They're supposed to know this. And then they told me, what is Martin Luther King? And I was like, oh, goodness gracious. I didn't ask them, what is Transformers? Do they know what Optimus Prime is? And they said, oh, Optimus Prime from the movie Transformers 1? And I said, no, Transformers. The normal Optimus Prime. I said, alright, when was Transformers made? And these people responded with, the Transformers were made 2025, bro. That's so easy. And I'm like, no, that were made in 1984. This is a simple classic fact everybody knows at the top of their head by the time they are 9 years old. Why? Because they used to sell toys, Transformer toys, in stores when I was younger. They would know that the Transformers ride from the 1980s. and now nobody knows what their file they came from. And then I asked him, when was YouTube made? And this is the YouTube, the most largest platform on the world, the most used, most popular, one of the most popular sites ever on the world, right? I asked him, when was YouTube made? This is the thing everybody knows. Even literally my birthday year is enough to tell him when YouTube was invented. 2005. And they said, when was it made? 2018? And I was like, no, 2005. Where are they getting this information from? And then I asked, okay, how long was DanTDM making content for? And they don't even know what DanTDM is. I was like, interesting, great. So now it's going over to, they don't know these faces anymore. I said, alright, who is Mr. Beast? How long has he been making content for? Oh, he probably has been, I don't know how long he's been making content for. And I'm like, huh? Mr. Beast has been around for over a decade. And then I asked him, hey guys, do you know about that one crazy submarine movie that Markiplier is making? Who is Markiplier? Oh, that submarine movie? Yeah, we're gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it with my friends. I'm gonna take my boys out there. I'm like, that's crazy cool. Okay, so who's Markiplier? Who's Markiplier? They tell me who Markiplier is. And I'm like, that's the guy behind the movie you're watching. That's a YouTuber. They didn't even know who was behind the movie. It was a YouTuber. Even I was easy on them for asking them a movie made by a YouTuber who was like literally known as one of the founding fathers of YouTube, like current trends, as it is. Like this is getting it worse. Is the fact that, let's say, about ADHD, I find in people in Florida who I know, in Poland as well. Poland is in this equation. Nepal, whatever country you can think of. The amount of people who are reading and writing is going down. The rates of people reading and writing and liking it, or at least just doing it, is going down, which is not a good sign. What does that do? It causes people unable, being able to write proper sentences. Why is breaking proper sentences really essential? So that you don't do mistakes, and when somebody reads your paper, doesn't immediately assume from 3 different definitions from one sloppy word that you made a typo on, right? This is a thing that's commonly done in the professional industry. Unfortunately, no, this is not ending. This is gonna continue. This is literally continuing. Like, I can continue giving more. Like, the amount of statistics I had to find and read to understand this is enormous, and I did a few studying, but we can't. Nothing disturbs me more is the data centers that are being built, which, by the way, can't exactly be built in Florida because Florida has some of the weakest ground possible for really heavy mega structures. Florida has some of the worst plot land that is built for data centers that you see in Texas. Texas has literally the most data centers that I can see that are being built by Google, Amazon, Meta, X, whatever you think. So that's still happening, right? They're still building those. I asked the kid, what is a data center? And I asked the teenager as well. I had teenager and kids, a few kids and teenagers. Because these people will be the ones who will be entering the world at 18 years old to facing these things whenever they turn 18. And I said, what is a data center? And they said, what is that? And so I'm like, okay, great. So they're not, like, no, not a singular one of them is questioning their surroundings. Great. And I said, all right, so who's the smartest person that you can find? I asked these kids and these teenagers. I said, what's the smartest person you know? And they would show me to this TikTok page, Instagram page of some random influencer online saying a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, great, so this is where they get their information from. And I then asked their teachers if they knew their students were looking at this content. Because you can't call students, you can't call teachers and representatives and the people who are supervising their teachers. They're people you can get in contact with in Florida. You can't do that. You're legally able to. Besides, you can't exactly get in the direct contact lines with parents and students though, but you can discuss how students are, right? You can ask about how it is. I tell them, do they know that their notes to the students are just straight up getting their information from TikTok and ChatGPT? And his teacher said, no, you don't question where our students go, where they get the information from. And I said, don't you think that's sort of literally inspiring their behavior making them so that they are refusing to learn from you and most likely not listen to you whenever they are in class. I asked them how much of their time are they spending their phone getting into, in time for the class. And they said 16 minutes. I was like, okay, really odd. I was given 3 minutes back in the day to get to my class. 3 minutes. So, 3 minutes. Now it's 10 to 16 minutes to get to class. And I had 3 minutes. Okay. So what these teachers are telling me is like already shocking enough. And I tell them, is your student able to read? They said no. They can't even finish the reading test. I said, is the reading test harder than the reading test from 2023, from 2021? They said, no, we had to cut curriculum 8 times. So the student has to do a curriculum that is completely divided and chopped compared to the curriculums I had to take when I was in school. Really odd, maybe I'm delusional, so I had to ask different schools. And I said, did they cut curriculum because students weren't able to perform well? And they said, yes, we had to curve many grades. And I said, how many students would have failed if you hadn't curved their grades? And most teachers were really scared of answering that question, but some still did answer, which fortunately did happen. And they said lots of students would fail. The school would have a rate of over 60% of students dropping and failing the school if they had not curved their students' grades. And I was like, okay, no good. How many actually fail, even after curves, since you do curves? And they said less than 30%. Which is meaning that a lot of people who are not even fully educated are just still graduating from their grade or maybe graduating from school as a whole. They're graduating with these really low parameters, and everybody else, like people like me, have to deal with idiots who are now being let into the world, right? And this is super common, right? So what can most people do about it is, first, number one, why haven't anybody in Florida, which I'm noticing, have run up for Democrat so far? Why are there the most weak-ass Democrats in Florida? Which, if anybody looks the data on this, there's a very low Democratic spending force on Florida for Democrats. There's absolutely no competition for Republicans in the state of Florida because the state of Florida was always red and Republican, which unfortunately translates to the stupidity of people that I had to deal with for the past few days or weeks or years or months on end. And unfortunately, when people are inspired by more stupid people who then watch stupid people who are near people who are not even paid enough to educate them properly, who are now being paid unfairly from their super assistants, right, and their supervisors and principals, who are also not being paid enough to pay their teachers to educate their students. The circle goes around. And same for mental programs and social programs and physical programs, which I'm seeing are being cut and underfunded. So whenever I see a student complaining about how shitty their programs are, I'm like, absolutely true. Because they're underfunded. They suck. Statistically, they are underfunded. Wonder why. And then they fault their teachers for it, and unlike their teachers are not the ones cutting the funds. They're just their teacher. They're a public figure who is on a payroll. They're underpaid. Same for their principal. The principal can't even pay the teachers properly when the principal is also being underfunded and cut and attacked by Donald Trump's administration, which is currently attacking universities, colleges, and normal schools, elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. Yeah, anything. If he sees anybody smart being produced, and they're considered dangerous. So like already on Roblox, for example, we're gonna sidetrack so I can get retention rate because most of you have like 30-second attention spans, maybe 5 seconds. I saw 5-second TikToks. They're like a huge thing now. So, I literally looked at this and it was quite amazing to see how Roblox sees smart people, right? So as long as they are getting money, they're fine with people being called vigilantes for removing predators off their platform. So if you go over to some of the more conservative podcast reform channels that I've been looking into, if you look into how they treat smart people, they consider smart people woke and conspiracy theorists, being that they are conspiracy theorists themselves. which is really ironic that experts are also now considered conspiracy theorists to a bunch of conservative media. Now, when a parent is conservative and then sends them to schools where now propaganda like PragerU is in Florida, for example, is used, and then they send their student over there. Now the student is receiving propaganda and falsified information, and when the student grows up to be a teenager and then they come over and talk to me, they're gonna say, Viz, you're all wrong because I know better than you. And I'm just like, poor child, poor child. Those parents did him ugly. That kid will never go places. And unfortunately, maybe the kid will go places. I stand to be found is that when I looked at data, there are idiots who are out there who get $1 million off of doing the most retarded shit possible. And yes, they actually get money and famous for doing most stupidest things I've ever seen. And somebody like me, even if I fact checked as many people as I can with an AI or whatever or something, I would be paid nothing. So here's how this works. Somebody could literally be successful off of literally being a predator online, and so I don't think anybody is like unable to be rich now. All you have to do is rape a child and steal drugs and be a nuisance and asshole, blow fireworks in Walmart and steal people from steal people's money and scam them, do crypto dump and pump schemes. And as long as you're somebody who owns guns and shoot people like Renee Good in the face 3 times, I guess you will be rich and famous and loved. And maybe if you hate women and you're misogynist and you're like a complete asshole, are able to be beat up in a boxing match like Andrew Tate is, I guess you'll be famous and successful like Aiden Ross's stupidity online. I mean, as long as you have the IQ of an infant, I guess you'll be rich and successful and make it really far in places rather than actually going through school and getting a bachelor's degree only to be dropped by your job because you're too smart for the manager and you're too dangerous because you're smart. So as long as you're a puppet and a slave to society, I guess you can be successful. And take it from Aiden Ross, we had Anthony Fantano basically said that Aiden Ross is the smartest human being in the world. And as long as you're somebody like them, I guess you can be successful, more successful than I am, which is, I guess, statistically proven because lots of people like Nick Fuentes, Latino himself, which really ironic is that he actually is Latin himself and he hates Mexicans and he doesn't even know what Pythagoras is, which shows that you can be really stupid and still get really famous and rich online, which is now unfortunately the truth right now because in 2026 facts are not considered a form of harassment, where if you tell somebody that why it rains is because evaporation exists, that now you're considered an imbecile for saying that evaporation exists. So I had the amount of people who saw me destroy people in debates would know that I'm being sarcastic about this. It's gonna be this is gonna be a very long one. Attempt number 3. Stupid recording is getting longer than it is. Imagine the amount of times I've repeated this. Anybody who's been around since 2023 who's in my Discord server, no, I don't have a fedora. I can't even afford a fedora. I can't make myself like an idiot because it actually costs too much on the internet to afford a fedora and make myself look stupid because the economy sucks. Now we do have tariffs coming incoming this February. The beautiful tariffs that we had already since the D-Day for tariffs around countries being placed in crippling our economy so terribly are now about to be back because Donald Trump wants to fight with the EU, which is some of the most stupidest things I've ever seen in my entire life. But he's still rich, so I guess tariff putting tariffs on your friends is a really good idea. All it takes is sacrificing the middle class and making them suffer more, which I guess makes logical sense if you want to be richer from the poor people that you're simply only taking more money from, which I guess is understandable. So I guess stealing money from people is really respectable in these places now in America, and I guess doing crypto dump and pump schemes is seemingly legible. So, and people who know what I'm talking about know I'm being feeling sarcastic again. So, in this channel, I've repeatedly and numerously have said the amount of times I've alerted people about censorship. I've alerted them about economic downfall. I told them about unemployment. I told them about standard censorship. I told them about the sites that they can go to talk to representatives. I had a fight with MasterCard and Visa and all these other large companies we can get into, like Instacart. I've already worked with certain individual members and I discussed them about rules and regulations and laws. And we still have our critters out there who don't know how to read comments. And if they can't read comments, they most likely can't read books. And they most likely can't read essays or write essays, which is a really bad sign of people getting dumber. And this has been a trend, is a downtrend of people's intelligence, which leads to people literally speaking out of their ass and telling me that their information is right because they said so, with no evidence to back up their claims. And now I get called sicknesses and I get called symptoms from people who get their information from TikTok, which is a really ironic thing because the very people who call me those sicknesses most likely have ADHD, autism, and really bad mental illnesses. And even more sadder is that I often don't bring up their mental illnesses because it would actually be extremely rude of me to bring up their mental illnesses. I merely reference it to people who are actually evil and not just mentally ill. Mentally ill people are not necessarily evil people. They are actually just mentally ill people. They're not evil people. There are mentally ill people that can be evil, but that's not everybody else. And just like how I am, people think that because I fact check people, they think that is a really bad thing because I'm being rude and I'm being too factually correct, which is probably too bipartisan for their blood in their veins, being injected filled with drugs and sugar and TikTok and Instagram reels, right? So I'm getting constantly called mental illnesses by people who generally don't even know what those mental illnesses even mean, which is just a crazy fact. Is most people who throw mental illness insults at people most likely don't even know what the mental illness actually looks like or how it works, which is really, really also ironic. Is that I say, for example, I remember this really awful person who preyed on the attention of girls who were depressed. There was a guy, he profited off of, asking girls for money on these sites. He basically used his handsomeness to basically coerce people with sexual notations. And his targets were teenage girls who were angsty and depressed and tired with their lives, right? And I saw that the guy had actual PTSD and he had actual ADHD, right? He was literally a mood swinger on the spot, which is why he did all of these awful, terrible scams. He didn't feel a singular thing from manipulating a bunch of depressed girls for their money. Yes, teenage girls who were angsty and were scammed. So I told them, oh, you must have ADHD, you're probably retarded. And he said, he is. He literally is diagnosed with ADHD and he is legitimately retarded. If anybody wants to know, that is actually a medical condition. That is not an insult. Retarded is a medical condition. You shouldn't throw that around if you don't know what that actually means. Unfortunately, I get constantly thrown autistic around at my friends, which get constantly called autistic for simply being smartasses. And then we'd ask the people, what does autistic mean? And they wouldn't even know what autistic means. They don't even know about its variations and spectrums. Really ironic. Really ironic. It's not just to me. My friends even get called these mental illness names, and I'm just like, why? Why? We want to be friends. We want to get together. But it's too cool to be smart. Being smart is not cool. Understandable. Let's see them get taken over to the oceans fishing for 3,000 fish with their massive $12.5 million boat and see if they need intelligence for that. And they'll notice that they might actually need to know how to do math in order to do that job. Because most likely all of them will die on that same $12.5 million boat because they don't know how to actually measure how much oxygen they would need in order to not faint or pass away on the boat because of seasickness and lots of different other seasicknesses that you can get while running a boat trying to fish for 3,000 fish. So unfortunately, being a laborhead doesn't exactly make you the smartest human being. Unfortunately, that's how the world works. That's how the world works. That's how it's always been. And unfortunately, we have this also coming up, we have censorship. Okay, so censorship. I did talk about education now. Kids not questioning a singular bit if what they are learning is AI generated. We also have other issues about censorship. Say a kid is used to having to verify their face online to see if they're 18 or not 18 years old. And then kids are just getting used to having to certify themselves as 18 or not by using their non-existent ID and putting it in front of a camera to take a photo out so that they can verify their age. Most people who are 15 and 16 years old either don't have an ID or have an ID. And people who are under that most likely don't have an ID. If anybody knows how to, I literally asked a few kids, hey, how do you get an ID? And they said, my mommy and daddy has an ID, so I just asked him to get me ID. And I'm like, okay, how do you get ID? And they said, what do you mean? I just asked my mom and dad. And I said, no, how do you get your fucking ID? They didn't know how to get their own ID. They think an ID only comes from mom and dad. Really weird. You know what person I asked for this information? A 17-year-old. There is a 17-year-old man who literally asked their mom and dad for ID and doesn't know how to get their own ID. Was he Mexican, American? Nope. It was a Japanese man. I then asked the Mexican and an American, then a Bolivian, hey, do you know how to get your ID? And they said, no, I just asked my mom and dad for their ID for verification. And I was like, all right, how do you get your ID? And they didn't know how to get their ID. Really weird. And then I asked them, all right, how much does their ID cost per state? Because the states sell different prices for different IDs. Certain places sell IDs for different prices. It depends on driver, government, state, or health or working visa, right? It depends. And I said, all right, how much does it cost? And they said, I don't know, probably costs $5. And I'm like, you're fucking stupid. It's $125. There is a simple standardized rate for IDs. They are stupid and don't know anything that they're talking about. And of course, I couldn't say that to their face because I had to be really nice to them, saying, oh, okay, that's not how you get ID. That's not how much it costs. I'll help you get your ID. So, of course, I had to act like a really naive and dumb person so that I don't get on the nerves. Sometimes being dumber actually helps people stop being mad at you. So and then I had to confirm this, and I said, all right, what is age verification? And they said, oh, it's this thing that every social media does. I'm like, all right, how long has it existed for? And they said it probably always existed. Like, it's always existed. And I'm like, no, you're fucking stupid. Its censorship has only existed properly and globally for around less than a year. I told them, how old is this country? And they weren't able to tell me how old the United States is. So they think this 6 months of upheaval on AI and censorship is completely normal and that it has always existed. This is why we have to be really careful about what we tell people and what they are getting their information from. This doesn't mean tell them to not watch their source information. No, we can't do that. Certain people don't like it when we tell them not to watch a bunch of retards online because it's easier to be stupid and be blissfully ignorant because it feels better that way than being smarter and knowing what is actually going on. So then we tell them, all right, I apologize, that source is not really good. I can give you a few more content creators to watch. And we have to source them actual smart people who at least know decent basic information about their rights and censorship. And they finally get interested and we're like, oh, censorship is bad. And I'm like, correct. Censorship is really bad. And I have to talk to these people like they're fifth graders, just so you all know they're a bunch of teenagers. They're a bunch of teenagers. They don't know what it is. They don't understand it. I'll literally tell them, what is a flock safety camera? And they said, what is that? Is that a bird species? And I'm like, no, that is a surveillance company in relation to censorship funded by Peter Thiel and all these other tech giants and tech bros. They're meant to steal your information, spy on you, and stalk on you. And they said, Vince, that doesn't exist. You must be getting that from some conspiracy theorist podcast online. And I'm like, you're getting your information from TikTok. Odd. And so I continued. I said, okay, why don't they go to the website? And I sent them a link to a flock safety camera website to see what maybe they can look at themselves what a flock safety surveillance camera meant for stalking and spyware is like. And they went to it and they actually had found where they lived because a camera was placed right outside their house. I was like, great, you found where you live, literally being projected by a camera that anybody can simply search with and find and use to stalk you with. Really fascinating. Wow, that's so totally normal. Why? Why must I deal with a bunch of really dumb people? I don't know. This is an effect of education going downtrend, right? This is what happens when people actually generally get dumber. So, I'm gonna explain why this is a devastating effect on how people will work together. When people get dumber, it is harder to convince them on things because they are skeptical if something is real or not. Most likely not able to listen because it's not going to benefit them. They don't have a simple premise to work with. So then we have to simplify things by saying, we hate rich people. And they'll listen because they also hate rich people. They had the bad guys. And we're like, yeah, we hate bad guys. And I have to simplify to that because then if I tell them anything complicated, these people would just go, Viz, you're a conspiracy theorist and you know nothing. And you're making excuses. And then I tell them, oh, guys, we have to stop the bad guys. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'll support. And I'm like, wow, he completely folded. Which is really also concerning that I now can't say anything complicated without it being questioned. Now, if I say something like, guys, if we do this, we'll get $3, and they start listening to me, I'm like, wow. NPC moment right there. Okay, so then I had to test this, and it was very funny. I saw a kid do this. It was on Creepcast channel. He watched a kid paint his face with markers, right, to make him look it like he had a beard on his face, to make it look like he had a beard. He did that, and the AI thought he was over 18 years old. And this gets dumber because now Discord and Minecraft is now also putting age verification. Before everybody says it's only the UK. Literally every part of like the censorship campaign that I've been seeing that's been going on has spread globally. It's always like in one country and then it just spreads over to more countries. And then I'm just like, yeah, it's only in the UK, guys. It's only in the UK. Nobody cares because it's only there and it's not affecting them. And then I feel like these are the type of people who would wait until something gets so awful and bad that they'd probably literally watch people get gassed in their neighborhood and get shot down in the neighborhood and not question it because it's not happening to them guys because it's not them and it's not affecting them, so it doesn't matter. So, this is how stupid and absurd this is getting when I see people saying, well, it's not happening to me. I'm like, great. So you'll watch your entire neighborhood gassed and killed. And you're going to go, well, it's not happening to me because there's nobody shooting me and gassing me in the face. So, that's the most hypocritical, most stupid thing I could hear, right? It's really negligent of how, everything works and as society. On a societal level, that is, complete blissful ignorance and really negligent to what is actually going on. It's not just a bunch of people saying, I'm going to sign a law where I give people free healthcare. That's not how it works. They think it's, oh, if we beat up all the police, they will disappear. No, you're all going to jail if you beat up all the bad, evil polices. Let me see, there's a conflict of interest right there. Anyways, I could go on forever about like everything that's going on. Well, how long were we in this video? We're in 49 minutes in this stupid video. And I bet there's people who click on this video who will literally not go 10 seconds into the video because it will make them yawn, right? It will make them yawn. And these are the same people who will complain about their depression, their feelings, while going outside and doing awful things at night and breaking the law and jaywalking and crossing the road in front of a bunch of cars at 12 p.m. So, or 12 a.m. I see people do this so many times out there, not just the same people I know. There's a lot of people who does this. Like they say everybody does this. I agree. Everybody does this. Let's see if the accident rate for jaywalking accidents doesn't go up when you do that shit. Let's see if it doesn't go up. And then it goes up because someone may actually get hit by a car by doing that, higher the rate. It's not about one accident because it doesn't affect them. It's about the other people who will get run over and hit by a car for simply jaywalking at 12 in the morning. The other people will be hit, and because it's not you, it doesn't matter, which is what I'm noticing people are doing. So if somebody had assassinated their entire family line, if it didn't happen to them, it doesn't matter. Interesting. So if somebody had defunded the entire school and they were left with one teacher who was still funded, and it's not affecting them, so it doesn't matter to them because they still have their teacher. But the entire school is down. It's on fire. It doesn't exist. That's what we're working with. That's how negligent that people have become, right? This is the type of insanity I'm dealing with, right? So if I make any factual statement, it is considered conspiracy theory. And every time I say anything sane, it sounds they think, oh, because he has a mental illness. I'm like, these people have mental illnesses themselves. If anybody wants to know, I think I did a health report back in 2024 where they did a health report on my body and my mental state, my mental being. And they checked me and they said, Viz, you have absolutely nothing wrong. You are still fine. They showed me papers showing that my blood was still fine, my blood sugar was still fine, brain was still fine. Rates were doing absolutely fine. You know, my weight was underweight a little, but it doesn't affect my mental state. I checked if I had like what if I had testicular cancer? Maybe I had ADHD. Maybe I had Tourette's. Something of any kind. Some random, maybe a minor mental illness. And they said, "This, you don't have any." And everywhere I go, there are people who diagnose themselves with mental illnesses that they don't have and then act with as if they have that mental illness, which I see on TikTok a lot, which is kind of hilarious when I see people faking Tourette's all the time. And then fake that they have ADHD when they haven't gone to a doctor to confirm it, which I see a lot. Now, people do have ADHD out there. There's some people who do have it. Yeah, of course they do. And then there's people who don't, who fake it. Who then say, guys, I have ADHD, so I can beat you up because my ADHD excuses it. So if my dad beat up this guy, then it should be okay because he has ADHD. Right, guys? See, this is like the fucking hypocritical thing that I hear from people, right? So, oh, he has PTSD, guys. He can shoot you in the head because he has PTSD. Yeah, of course. Then my mother can shoot your father then because she has PTSD. No. Stop. Stop. Don't. Alright, so for those who are, who've been around on this channel for 8 years, it's actually 8 years now. We're about to be hit, like, what, 9 years this June for my other channel in 2017, but like this channel, 8 years. 8 years. But for those who cared, who've been following for around 8 years, who actually use their brains, who actually look and do their research, who actually question if what I'm doing is right and send me reasons why I could possibly be wrong with actual evidence and articles and essays backing up their statements rather than a bunch of nothing burgers and gut punches in the air. So, thank you for being on this channel. If anybody hates the really satirical jokes I've been making on this channel, I apologize because unfortunately there are people who rather would listen to a guy joke about the Nazis and ICE agents and how they have fucked 18 girls, and then they would listen to that guy instead of somebody who had been trying their best to make sure they don't get abused in the job labor market, which is really ironic. So those who have stayed around who appreciated all my work, and I am working with VTuber historians now, which is crazy. I've gotten contact, that's a video on its own. I'm looking around with VTuber historians and internet archivists, and I'm asking for their contacts, and it's working. We're discovering really cool things now. I want to turn this channel into something that's taking a different direction, right? The middle era was something of a story of its own, but I wanted to make sure that we're taking a different direction here for a bit before we get back into censorship. Because what I've been interested in is VTuber history, game map making, and sorts of architectural aspects in Blender, right? I want to get to Blender, archiving, internet history, and stuff like that. I want to actually deal into that because besides me playing Roblox on the screen that you're watching, because I had to literally play video games and put it on the screen so that people can actually look at the screen. Because unfortunately, because most people's attention spans are like 5 seconds to 30 seconds, fucking worthless length of my time. Because one-liner is all they need. I have to put video games and some attractive women on the screen so that they can keep watching. And ironic, a third of my audience is a bunch of females in their 20s. Most of my audience are literally just a bunch of grown people, which you're doing a dealing for me just simply watching this video and still working. You're still working at your jobs and then heading and reporting to my videos and watching on average over 20 to 30 minutes of my videos, which is crazy. Because when I had looked at the rates for how many teenagers stay and watch videos, they had a rate of 1 to 3 minutes of watching the video compared to the 20-30 minutes I'm getting from adults who have brains. And so teens can be smart. We can discredit the huge genius violinist girl who is 13 years old. I'm not gonna discredit that. She's a felon genius. Teens can be absolutely smart ass and even smarter than I am in certain sectors at a younger age. That's has happened before. But yeah, I'm getting a lot more bullshit from teens. Generally, not always, but generally. General shouldn't be all, right? All in general. Different terms, different subdivisions of communities and mediums. The thinking medium has been quite intense as of 2026, and if I've been using really bigger words this lately on my videos, it is because I actually genuinely care about what the hell I'm doing. Right, I genuinely care rather than going around like Gen Z closing a stream after watching Iron Mouse sing in a voice that he could never achieve. So if any sponsors like Ground, I'm probably gonna contact Ground News. Look, Ground News is my best shot right now. But if Ground News ever sponsors my channel, they're gonna see my channel report the news all the time. I will do it. If Ground News can give me a chip of their worth, if they do that and sponsor my channel, I'm in all. I'm all ears. Right now for the VTuber historians. Discord link down in the description below. Please, please, please. I need smartasses, like actual smartasses. Now, if you're somebody who wants to be one, you still can join my Discord server. We don't put paywalls for information, unlike most YouTubers who put Patreons so that you can pay them $15 a month to access the truth, which it should never cost, right? The truth shouldn't cost money, but they can do their business selling their truth for $15 a month, and I don't put paywalls in front of that, for them. So stay safe out there. Protest peacefully. Know your rights. Do what you have to can. Sorry to say about me is what you say about society. I've been at this for 8 years. I hope it's 9 years soon. And my 10th anniversary on Roblox is this June of 2026. We're looking forward to that. And we also have our 6th anniversary in my music making because it's this March. March is my anniversary for music. August is my anniversary for art, writing, and video make. All this boring stuff. You can learn about this in the Discord server. Anyway, stay safe out there. Don't do stupid things. Please, whatever you're doing, be skeptical of information, but don't be nonsensical about it. All right? Please, please, please do your research. Literally, if you're doing simple research, should not cost too much. Right? It shouldn't cost too much. I love you for that. Right? Stay original. Literally. Literally. If somebody ever tells you to put Clorox into your blood and you actually do it, that's all on you.